Chapter 720. Luo Nan could more or less understand the reason for Yanfen's shocked and pale expression. After all, this sort of phenomenon, similar to the reversal of time and space, was quite frightening from a visual perspective. But it was a pity that this was only an illusion. This relatively complete body was merely a temporary carrier to collect Right's chaotic collapse of energy. The complex and precise functions of the human body were ultimately not building blocks. It was impossible for Luo Nan to bestow a new life force to the already shattered cellular tissues. This already exceeded the limits of the domain that his soul strength could reach. At most he could only give Yanfen and even Right the illusion that he was mostly mistaken. And it was precisely this tiny domain constructed from this illusion that still allowed the flow of consciousness and cognition. It even allowed the body to make the tiniest of minute reactions. Within this tiniest of minute limits, Right's remnant consciousness and his incomplete body blended together. It was like a spark beneath a whirlwind of ashes. Though it was tiny, it was still bright. Right miraculously retained a single breath. This also allowed him to personally experience the marvelous taste of his body disintegrating and reassembling, of his soul burning and reassembling. This was truly the life and death of a person. It followed a majestic and powerful will. It suddenly died and suddenly existed, treading back and forth on the boundary between life and death. And all of this was led by the furnace before his eyes. Oh, it was the master. He did his best to widen his eyes. The dim light of the outside world penetrated through the shattered and reassembled crystal. It spurred on the cone cells and a series of subsequent nerve reflexes, combining the fuzzy information of the outside world with the imaginary illusions in his brain. It made this demon, who was already destined to die, let out the most pious sigh of his entire life. Oh God! The temporarily reassembled soul was annihilated. The reformed body collapsed and dissolved like a pile of mud. It also completely digested the impact force of the abyssal storm, turning the intense turbulence of the abyssal plane into nothingness. This was undoubtedly an extremely cruel way to die. But before Right completely disintegrated, his vocal cords vibrated. A weak force pushed through the layers of conduction in the air molecules, transmitting the sigh that was rich with emotions and time. Though the range of influence didn't even exceed a diameter of 3 meters, it was already enough for Luo Nan and Yanfen to hear it. Was this a god? A certain someone's requirements were really low. Luo Nan shook his head slightly. He wasn't as ignorant as Right. The virtual brain system involved configuration, dynamo core, and all sorts of other deep theories. Luo Nan still didn't fully understand them. He stumbled and stumbled when putting them into practice. He could only advance at a tortoise speed within the labyrinth of clouds and mist. And from his perspective of experience, it was just a brilliant sun wheel within an abyss. The might that came from the endless void was immeasurable. With such a comparison, if he were a god, the power system of this universe would probably collapse immediately. In the end, it was just an overly delusional delusion of an ignorant person. This was what Luo Nan thought, but Yanfen, who was lying on the bed, quivered and her entire face swelled red. At that moment she was still under the influence of the nerve agent. Her limbs were numb and it was difficult for her to control them. She could only barely move her vocal cords to spell out 2 words between hiccups and chuckles. Luckily Luo Nan's ears were good. After Yanfen repeated it several times, he was finally able to make out the words clearly. Cloak, cloak. Hey, a cloak is different from a cloak. Of course, Luo Nan knew that what Yanfen said wasn't the literal meaning, but now wasn't the time to get to the bottom of it. From his perspective, finding the right nerve agent treatment method and antidote was more difficult than anything he had done before. His gaze turned to the door of the damaged room. There, the Vulcan ant was controlling the giant salamander to stagger back. Treat a dead horse as if it were alive. No, the one who started the trouble needs to untie it. Whether or not tonight's matter would have a good ending would depend on whether or not this old saying filled with empiricism would be useful. Reality proved that Luo Nan's luck wasn't bad. It was just as dead Ghost Right had said. He didn't add too much nerve agent to Yanfen. Yanfen herself had a rather powerful fleshly body. Her bodily functions were much stronger than a normal person's. After stopping the continuous injection of the nerve agent, Luo Nan assisted her in combing her neural network and she slowly recovered. When she was barely able to move, Yanfen struggled to get down to the ground. She practically threw herself at Luo Nan's feet. She didn't care about the filth and bloodstains on the ground. She gave a heavy kowtow. There weren't any words of thanks coming out of her mouth. Instead, she piously kissed the corner of Luo Nan's cloak. Was this a custom of some vagrant tribe or their Xia Luo cult? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Perhaps it could be said that Luo Nan maintained the principle of acting cool. Luo Nan resisted his instinct to avoid it and accepted it. Yanfen gave another kowtow after completing the ceremony. Then she staggered to her feet. She practically used her hands and feet to arrive at a corner of the room. Zhang Lu'en, who had fallen into a semi-conscious state due to massive blood loss, lay there. Yanfen didn't say a word from beginning to end. She just used her trembling hands to feel around Zhang Lu'en's body. Soon she pulled out a dagger from the leather sheath at Zhang Lu'en's waist. This should be the weapon that Zhang Lu'en normally used. He didn't have the time to use it when he attacked Luo Nan, but now Yanfen had it in her hands. Without any hesitation, Yanfen stabbed the dagger straight into Zhang Lu'en's perfectly fine left shoulder socket. Luo Nan's eyebrows jumped when he saw this, but he didn't seem to have the qualifications to say anything since his feet were a bloody mess. Zhang Lu'en woke up from the pain and screamed loudly. But when his eyes reflected the pale and distorted face of his wife, it was as if his throat had been cut open. Only the hissing sound of air leaking could be heard for a time. Yanfen pressed the weight of her entire body onto the dagger. The edge of the dagger had long since pierced through Zhang Lu'en's shoulder socket, stabbing into the ground below. She was very close to Zhang Lu'en and her husband. She was practically speaking right next to their ears. "Tell me, why did you do this?" Hiss. "Let go. Let go." Zhang Lu'en finally remembered to speak, but he begged for mercy from the torment of the pain. His thick and sturdy body spasmed and twitched as he rubbed against the ground. "Tell me why." Yanfen's voice was weak. It was as if she could lose her voice at any time. But the enormous tension of her emotions bombarded Zhang Lu'en's heart with the piercing edge of the dagger. Zhang Lu'en wriggled and struggled on the ground to no avail. He could only scream with all his might, "The Xieluo order is about to be finished. I told you before. Right is a member of the Amaterasu order. The Amaterasu order. The strongest of the three great orders. There's no hope for us if we're targeted by them." No hope? The breath in Yanfen's throat trembled. It was hard to tell whether she was crying or laughing. "There's no hope for us if we're targeted. You want to sell everyone? Weren't you the ones who insisted on putting on airs?" Blood gushed out of Zhang Lu'en's shoulder like a fountain. Blood flowed endlessly from his severed arm as well. His willpower had almost completely collapsed. Tears and snot flowed from the dignified and imposing man's eyes. He was in so much pain that he couldn't even reply for a time. Yanfen didn't need to reply either. She was just venting her emotions. "It's you. You used the survival of the tribe as an excuse to push Wu Jun to the top. She's not a member of the tribe. She's just a postgraduate student stranded in the wilderness. She's still pregnant. She was about to return to the city to give polio a better environment. It's you. You forced her to the top. It's because of the cloak, right? Because she's the only operator in the base who has mastered this technique." Once again Yanfen twisted the dagger in her hand. Zhang Lu'en screamed even louder. His waist and legs twisted. He tried desperately to shake Yanfen off, but it was all in vain. In the end he just gave up and shouted, "So what? She should have given me the cloak long ago." "Give it to you? Didn't she want to return to the city?" After returning to Spring City, she could have left if she wanted to, but she refused to let go of the position. Those stubborn idiots really treated her like a priest. Fine, even if she was a priest, what did she do? All she did was enchantment. 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 These childish tricks might have been useful in the wilderness, but they're in a big city now. There are so many powerful people in the government, the military, the association, and the church. Enchantment is useless. Give me power. Zhang Lu'en's face was purple and his veins were bulging. He screamed at the top of his lungs. "Since she's a priest, isn't it reasonable for her to give power to her believers? If she can't even do that, how can she start a religion? How can she call herself a god?" Yanfen screamed back, "We never did that." However, Zhang Lu'en was purely venting at this time. He only roared in his own logic. That **to cloak is simply the nonsense of a crazy old man. Only those stubborn fools would worship it as if it were a god and promote it wantonly. Now the Amaterasu sect is here. They asked for it and they got it. Why should I die with them? Of course I have to sell it for a good price. Yanfen stared at the man beneath her. She stared at her husband and squeezed out the words through her teeth. You're shameless. Only a useless god is shameless. Zhang Lu and pushed his head back. He didn't even care about the wound on his shoulder as he scolded. Useless, unqualified. Compared to a real church, you're just trash that can't do anything. It's trash like this that has delayed me for so many years. My talent and youth have been ruined by this trash, and I still have to struggle in the cave like a worm. To hell with the cloak, to hell with the loyalty. His voice suddenly changed tone, mixing with the sound of his throat, skin, fascia and bones being cut open. Yanfen pulled out her knife and slit her husband's throat. The airflow and gurgling blood drained the last bit of Zhang Lu An's vitality and ambition. At the same time she used up the last bit of her strength. Chapter 721. From 6 to 7 o'clock a.m., the simulated sky lighting was adjusted to its brightness. With the support of electricity, the ventilation system sent a cool breeze that brushed against the child's face. The slight light and touch triggered Polio's biological clock. He blinked and woke up from his sleep. His face was wrinkled. The warm and hard metal arm had left a few marks on his face, and it was bumpy to the touch. His neck wasn't comfortable either. How did I sleep last night? The grogginess from waking up couldn't subside. Polio felt that his head was swaying left and right and he was going to fall down at any moment. Should I sleep for a while? It's better not to. I seem to have forgotten something and it's a terrible memory. He rubbed his eyes with his left hand and rummaged through his blurry memory. The room door knocked twice before it was pushed open. Polio, today's breakfast is egg porridge. Wash up quickly before it gets cold. Oh, I understand, Aunt Fin. Polio shook his head and propped himself up from the floor. His memory surfaced. His mother was away and Aunt Fin delivered breakfast every morning. It was mealtime and then, Aunt Fin. Polio jumped up and chased after her. Yanfen turned around and caught Polio, who was like a cannonball. After physical contact, the ridiculous distance between the dream and reality was bridged. Polio's heart was pounding and he lifted his head nervously to size up Fun. In his eyes, Aunt Fin's face was still fine, but there was an obvious strangulation mark on her neck, and her complexion was also very pale. These details shattered the illusion of a peaceful daily life, and made everything in the surroundings quickly become real. Polio remembered the previous night, the submarine escape, the accident and Mr. Furnace. He wept beside Furnace, the magical charging and his confession. All sorts of scenes flashed past his mind and he linked them together. It was supposed to be a prelude to a battle. Polio was prepared to fight, but, Aunt Fin, did you see Mr. Furnace? Yanfen smiled and gave Polio a peck on his cheek. Then she placed her cheek behind his head and said softly, Of course I saw him. Thanks to your help, I didn't delay your breakfast. Don't play it down. Polio grumbled loudly. He could smell the scent of blood and medicine on Aunt Fin's body. Her injuries weren't light. Yanfen smiled and looked at Polio as she said, I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Polio looked down on the behavior of treating him like a child, but he couldn't do anything to Aunt Fin. He could only compromise and ask, Where's Mr. Furnace? Mr. Smelter had something to do and left first. He also drove the off-road vehicle in the exhibition hall. Xinghui 28 points. Polio remembered that the off-road vehicle was a souvenir assembled by his mother. Though it was priced, it wasn't for export. Mr. Furnace mentioned it last night. But what does 28 points mean? I might as well just drive away. Polio felt that the logic of an adult was ridiculous. It diluted his focus on the series of unknown events last night. Yanfen used other factors to distract him. Before leaving, Mr. Furnace gave you a gift and asked me to pass it to you. It's a pity that it's too big so I can't carry it up. You'll have to go down and take a look. Polio went downstairs in a daze and arrived at the exhibition hall. The powerful and domineering hand-assembled off-road vehicles were no longer there, but the shop didn't feel empty because there was a large number of hand-assembled off-road vehicles. Another gigantic fellow occupied the original spot. It was a thick reptile with 4 limbs and a long tail. Its head and neck were one and the same. Its grayish-black skin looked smooth and seemed to be wrapped in a layer of water film. There were yellowish-green round spots and protrusions on its skin. The color contrast was very strong. AI, is this a salamander? It's so big. Polio recognized the commonly seen amphibian in the karst cave. Its body was too big. Its head and body were about 2 meters long, and its flat tail was about the same length as the rest of its body. It was a huge creature that was about 4 meters long. With Polio's small body, he wouldn't be visible even if he was swallowed. Yanfen confirmed, it's a giant salamander. It's a mutant that lives in the karst cave waterway. Is this the gift? Mr. Lava is a beast tamer? Polio didn't dare to believe it. This large creature exceeded his expectations and understanding of gifts. He didn't care about what happened last night. He widened his eyes and sized up the giant salamander. He wanted to touch it, but Yanfen stopped him. This creature has a bad temper. Your small arms and legs won't be able to touch it. Wear this. As she spoke, Yanfen placed a translucent leather ring and metal bracelet on the wrist of Polio's mechanical right arm. Though the combination of the leather band and metal was strange, the size of the bracelet was made according to the interface of the mechanical arm. It fitted perfectly and didn't affect the functions of the mechanical arm. Polio sized up the new accessory curiously and discovered a small creature crawling inside the translucent leather band. It was a fiery red ant, a real living creature. It was crawling in the hollow tunnel of the leather band. Polio didn't know how it was sealed in. It was interesting, but it was also confusing. Put in your thoughts. That's what Mr. Furnace said. Yanfen's tone was rhythmic as though she was reciting a poem. Though we have to work hard to operate the mechanical arm without electricity, we can start from the basics. With her voice and Polio's focused gaze, the ants crawling in the leather bracelet seemed to have received a signal, and their movements stopped. At the exhibition platform, the giant salamander, who was lying lazily on the ground, suddenly lifted its head and twisted its body. Its bulging eyeballs rotated as it looked in the direction of Polio and Polio. Polio and Polio stared at each other. Polio held his breath and exclaimed, "Wah!" Using the chain configuration to link the individual brainwaves with the sensory organs of a single Vulcan ant. Then, through the condensation ring's global sensor network, it will connect with the Vulcan ant population. Simplified operating instructions and related interfaces have been added in the middle. It can partially realize intelligent operation, allowing idiots to operate. There are no problems with the basic idea, but it takes up a bit more resources and harasses the manipulator behind the scenes. After all, it's not like watching a child. I can optimize it further in the future. Luo Nan's brain operated at high speeds. He went over the design model of the present that Midnight had drafted in his mind once more to make sure that there were no obstructions. And from the feedback from the sensor network, Polio was having a lot of fun. Everyone was to their liking. Everything was perfect. Of course, this was just an embellishment after a series of tense events. It was a way of taking care of the cute little fellow. What Luo Nan truly needed to pay attention to was the entire plot thread he discovered last night. The Order of Justice and the Eye of Secret Contract were listed as one of the 3 great secret orders of the Amaterasu Order. Why would they be interested in the so-called holy relic of the Pheasant Order, something that even their own believers looked down upon? If this piece of information were to be sold, it would be enough for the various intelligence teams to give out month-end incentives. But what Luo Nan paid the most attention to in this entire thread was, "Luo Nan, are you seriously listening to Teacher Li's words?" Luo Nan shuddered. Only now did he come back to his senses. He noticed the people around him and the place they were in. Mrs. Luo Shuqing's gaze was stern. Her expression was furious as she sat on the sofa in the advisor's office. 2 meters away was the master of this office, Acumen College's dedicated advisor for the 10th grade, Mr. Li Mingda. Luo Nan himself stood across from the coffee table with the identity of a student who had committed a crime, receiving an education. However, his mind had been wandering outside the heavens just now. Old Immortal Mingda's words didn't even enter his ears. They were blocked out cleanly. "It's fine. It's fine. A young man's mind is quick-witted. His imagination is rich. A moment of distraction is nothing. And I understand student Luo Nan's personality. I'm worried that he's overthinking things." Li Mingda gently twirled the grizzled beard beneath his chin. This retro style suited his appearance quite well. It really did give him the air of a sage. If the cold sweat on his forehead was a bit less, then it would be even more perfect. Luo Shuqing bowed once more to express her apology. Teacher Li, Luonan has really caused you trouble during this time. Li Mingde chuckled. He was just about to continue the previous topic when Luonan's gaze shot over. The back of his neck turned slightly cold and he shook his head vigorously on the spot. No, no, no. This child, Luonan, is publicly acknowledged by our Academic Affairs Division. He's smart and precocious. He's quite different from ordinary children. This is a factor of his personality and IQ. It has nothing to do with how he conducts himself. You see, he doesn't have many friends in his age group. But he has a lot in common with his upperclassmen and the elites outside the school. That scoundrel Xie Junping has given him quite a few rotten ideas. Hu Huaying comes over every day to clean up his mess. The second generation of the construction society gnashes their teeth in anger at the mention of him. The Mystic Arts Research Society is directly surrounded by him. He brings bodyguards to the school and he openly flirts with society girls. All of you parents really don't know. Li Mingde's hand exerted strength and broke 2 strands of his beard. His lower jaw and heart twitched twice, but in the end he maintained the demeanor of a teacher. Mrs. Luo, we can't use ordinary eyes to look at special talents. Student Luonan has participated in many activities in this school year. He has also obtained outstanding results. Actually, this is something that the school and us teachers are happy to see. Luo Shuqing revealed a courteous and dignified smile to conceal her awkward and complex emotions. Perhaps Li Mingde saw through it, or perhaps he was completely indifferent. He just continued to speak according to the established plan. But in today's era of authority, one accepts the convenience of intelligence and also bears the restrictions of intelligence. In this way, some rules that are very suitable for ordinary people are used to treat geniuses. That's right, it's a student with extraordinary talent like Luonan. These rules often appear rigid and unreasonable. The school also hopes to find a plan that satisfies both sides. Student Luonan's special talent will be preserved to the greatest degree while finding a suitable and compliant space for him. Therefore we discussed for a bit. Perhaps Mrs. Luo, as his guardian, can be flexible and jump out of the boundaries of linear thinking. Luo Shuqing took a deep breath. What do you mean? Chapter 722. By the time the aunt and nephew left the office building, the golden-red rays of the late spring setting sun had already traversed more than half of the campus. The rays were cast from the angle between the North Shore jungle and the long river, casting a thick film of light over the bright green wetland vegetation. Luonan slightly narrowed his eyes. His gaze pierced through the layer of sunlight that ordinary people would find hard to look directly at. He swept his gaze over the movement and changes within the campus. He wasn't observing. He just had nothing to do. Mrs. Luo Shuqing didn't say a single word for an entire 3 minutes after leaving Li Mingde's office. She just walked forward in the corridor, in the elevator, and in the vast campus. It was as if she had completely forgotten the existence of her nephew. She was really angry this time. Luonan reckoned that he was probably the only child of the Luo family in 3 generations to have been recommended by the school authorities to take a leave of absence from school. Taking a leave of absence from school was just a polite way of saying it. Retaining the school credits, hours, honor, and so on and so forth didn't change the essence of having to repeat a year. Without a doubt, this was the vile incident of being hung from a beam and ruthlessly whipped. Luonan really didn't know what to say. He had the help of Xie Junping and Hu Huaying, 2 super tinkers with connections that reached the heavens, but he still couldn't make up for the lowest standard of absenteeism at Acumen College. He had really been too arrogant these past few months. Perhaps he should start with the SCA and invade the Department of Education's system. Luonan's mind spun with meaningless thoughts. At the same time, he had no choice but to admit that there was a little bit of relief and delight in the depths of his heart at the very least. If this matter were to really be smashed, then his life would really change. Mrs. Luo Shuqing suddenly stood still in front of him. Luonan reacted quickly and stood firm at the same time. His face hung low and his eyebrows lowered, making a terrified and ashamed appearance. Unfortunately, his acting skills were never up to par. Luo Shuqing's heart didn't fluctuate in the slightest. Her tone was flat as well. Do you have a lot of things to deal with over there? Yeah. Of course, Luonan knew that the so-called over there referred to the society and even the inner world. Normally at home, this was a topic that everyone was well aware of but tacitly didn't touch upon. Luo Nan really didn't know how to respond when it was suddenly brought up today. Fortunately, Luo Shuqing did not need Luo Nan to make up any more excuses or lies. She had her own observations and judgments. I can guess that you've done quite well over there. Your uncle and I haven't given you any help, but you've been able to drag out the matter of skipping classes until today. And you've done it in this manner. Don't look at your uncle just because he's in the SEA. I'm afraid that even if he sold his old face, he wouldn't be able to do a better job than this. What could Luo Nan say? With great difficulty he swallowed back the stupid words of "Aunt, you're too kind." He could only shut his mouth tightly and listen obediently. The problem was that Luo Shuqing only said this and didn't say anything else. Luo Nan wanted to ask but he didn't dare to. His belly full of suspicions was stifled to the point of being uncomfortable. It wasn't until he walked another 100 steps that he heard his aunt speak softly. About the suspension, I'll go back and discuss it with your uncle, okay? When it came to Luo Nan's studies, Mrs. Luo Shuqing had never used such an uncertain tone to converse with him like she did today. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment. Then he felt the heavy pressure of making a choice. He was actually speechless for a time. The two didn't take the trolley bus. They walked to the underground parking lot. Halfway there, Luo Nan was really unable to resist this overly oppressive atmosphere. He just wanted to say something, but when the words reached his mouth, a sentence suddenly jumped out. "And do you know of Wu Jun?" Huh. Luo Nan was a bit regretful as soon as the words left his mouth. The matter that happened to Ling Chen occupied far too much of his brain. Aside from the conflict between the Amaterasu Order and the Xia Luo Order over the Holy Cloak, there were also the words that Luo Nan was extremely sensitive to in the conversation between Yan Fun and Zhang Lu. Things like crazy old man, graduate student, suspension, and so on. Luo Nan couldn't help but think of something. It was just that he knew very little about the events of the past. His interpersonal relationships were even more muddled. He resisted the urge to ask in detail when he was in the karst cave for the sake of maintaining his cool and for the convenience of monitoring in the future. After returning to Xia City, he circled around inside and out. It seemed that his aunt was the only person he could ask a thing or two about. Even so, it wasn't good to mention this, right? Luo Nan was unable to explain the logic behind his question. Luo Shuqing turned to look at him just as he was feeling awkward. Wu Jun. Which Wu Jun? Luo Nan gaped, unable to speak for a time. Was he supposed to say, the priestess of the Xia Luo Order? The female owner of the machine modification shop in the black market exchange in the U-Hole far away in Spring City? Luckily, his current thinking speed far exceeded that of normal people. He immediately captured the astonished emotions behind his aunt's words. So he was just stifled for a moment before he quickly asked back. I'm talking about that graduate student. Luo Nan deliberately blurred out a few words in the middle. In the end, he ended with accurate and truthful information. Reality proved that his methods were very successful. Mrs. Luo Shuqing immediately filled in the blanks with her imagination. Her brows furrowed slightly. You saw Wu Jun? When did she return to Xia City? Oh my, there's actually a way. Luo Nan still wanted to confirm things. He spoke cautiously, that Mrs. Wu. She's my grandfather's graduate student. Did she stay in the wilderness for many years? Yes. Wu Jun was recommended to your grandfather's laboratory in the year 75, right after your parents. She was only 20 years old at the time. She was still a silly little girl. Where did you see her? Was it a chance encounter or did she come looking for you? Luo Nan felt that his aunt was quite nervous and he was suspicious. Was it because she knew of Wu Jun's current identity? Or was there some other sensitive situation that she didn't want him to know about? Luo Nan pondered in his mind, but he still spoke half-truths and half-lies. I've never seen her before. I just heard about her from someone else's mouth. I just asked in passing. Who told you? It was senior sister Tianxi. She's the one who went on a blind date with third brother Imochio. In the end it didn't work out. Right now she's a graduate student of Professor Pan, one of the Institute of Architecture and Design. You seem to have met her some time ago. Luo Shuqing had a bit of an impression. She nodded and let out a breath of relief subconsciously. Indeed. Professor Pan's younger brother, Dr. Panda, helped to evaluate and recommend the group of graduate students that went to the wilderness back then. You're quite familiar with that senior sister Tian. You're even talking about these old matters. Professor Pan likes to talk the most, especially about things related to my mother. Senior sister Tian is influenced by the company she keeps. She usually divulges a bit of information to me. Luo Nan laughed innocently and immediately said, "Speaking of which, was that Mrs. Wu always in the wilderness? Back then our family's laboratory was already gone. What was she doing over there?" Luo Xuqing laughed involuntarily. She graduated in 81. When the accident happened in the lab in 83, she had nearly 10 years of work experience. There were many large companies that wanted to recruit her. Really? Right now, Wu Jun didn't look like she was being recruited by a large company. Luo Nan felt that his aunt seemed to be avoiding some information. He immediately asked, "You're so clear about this matter. Has Wu Jun always been in contact with our family?" "Oh, we haven't seen each other in many years." "Oh? How long has it been?" "It's been around 6 or 7 years. The last time I saw her was around 90 years ago." "Huh. I should be able to remember things back then. How come I don't have any impression of her at all?" "She doesn't come often. She just comes every 1 or 2 years to see your grandfather and understand his condition. He goes straight to the sanatorium. How could there be such a coincidence?" "Hey, why do you have so many questions? Do you have bad intentions in your stomach? How could that be?" Luo Nan understood that it would be very difficult to get any more information from his aunt for the time being. And the things he knew right now were quite valuable. 90 years. This time period was extremely sensitive to Luo Nan. This was because it was from that year that he began to refer to his grandfather's notes. He began to research formatting theory without any hesitation. It was also in that year that Yen Hong's academic misconduct came to light. Quantum Corporation's Deep Blue platform began its trial operation. Of course, the last time his father showed his face and gave him the flexible e-ink screen with the external neuron was also in the same year. If the time and background were shifted to Wu Jun's side, well, polio would be around 5 or 6 years old. It was as Yanfen said. Wu Jun was forced to take over when she was pregnant. This should have happened around this time. But Luo Nan suddenly stood there stupidly. His mind churned with a rather absurd thought. Then it got out of hand. Wait. Wasn't he thinking too much? A human's thought process was like this. A sudden association was able to forcefully knead two matters that were separated by thousands of miles. It was similar to a montage style of editing, forming an inconceivable effect. Luo Nan was currently carrying out an inappropriate association. Before a certain person disappeared, Wu Jun maintained contact with her family. After she disappeared, she didn't come back. At the same time, around the time of her disappearance, Wu Jun became pregnant. Mother Asterisker. Luo Nan fiercely smacked his forehead. They had already entered the underground parking lot. The sound of this slap was extremely loud and clear in this relatively enclosed space. Luo Xuqing looked at him in astonishment. Luo Nan came to a realization and hurriedly suppressed the absurd thoughts in his mind. He revealed a smile to his aunt. "It's nothing. It's nothing. I was just a bit stupid." "You really were stupid." Luo Xuqing's anger was finally provoked. She glared at him fiercely and quickly walked to the side of the car. She sat in the driver's seat first. Luo Nan lowered his head and sat in the front passenger seat. He had a remorseful expression. Actually, he had already logged onto the psychic wave network. He used the Hexier to communicate with others. Of course, he could only send a message. Urgent. Reply when I see the message. Approximately 2 minutes later, when the car was on the high-speed magnetic track heading home, the other side finally responded, "You were in such a hurry that I dropped my test tube." "Boss Luo, what are your orders?" "Bro Octopus, I have a bit of skin tissue from last night. Can we do a paternity test with this?" "Did you bring hair follicles?" "I did." "That's not a problem. Speaking of which, both of them are?" "I have the relevant backups at the society. It's better to collect them recently?" The other side's message suddenly stopped. A full 10 seconds passed before an emoticon was sent over with a thought. Chapter 723. "Nanster, did you kill someone?" "I didn't." "But you messed up." "I didn't." "Then why did you do a paternity test?" "I did a paternity test for different mothers." "Then it was your dad messing around." "Believe it or not, I'll really kill someone." Luo Nan had to endure the wild bombardment of friends and family on the psychic wave network from evening to after dinner. There was also a family meeting about taking a leave of absence from school in the middle. He was mentally and physically exhausted before 9 o'clock. He just wanted to cover his head and sleep when he returned to his room. The aftereffects of the situation continued to spread. According to Bamboo Pole's estimates, by tomorrow morning, news of the proponent of the cage and configuration theory, the mental side genius Professor Luo Nan, conducting a secret paternity test and suspected of having an illegitimate child, would fill all the major forums, discussion groups, tabloids, and other platforms of the inner world. It would become one of the hottest topics of conversation in the inner world. The culprit, Octopus, was in a stupefied state. He was quite unlucky. When Luo Nan contacted him, he was working as a volunteer in the branch's biological laboratory. He was being exploited. He was so busy that his brain was a bit desensitized. From what he saw at the time, Luo Nan's request was too simple. Any assistant would be able to handle it. So he really did hand this matter over to his assistant. There was even a sampling service. And so, the beautiful and cute Miss Assistant, who had a screw loose in her head and a slightly wide lip structure, was driving to Luo Nan's house when the news completely exploded. In a sense, this was a very serious leak. It was said that He Yuan had dragged Octopus off the laboratory table and thrown him into the interrogation room. Then Octopus used the room as a refuge. He crouched down holding his head and refused to come out. The problem was that Luo Nan was several dozen kilometers away, staring coldly at him. Luo Nan was considering whether or not he should give Octopus a taste of heaven's punishment. In the end, Luo Nan held himself back. He didn't want this big news to get out. He could only force himself to concentrate and think about matters related to the Xia Luo sect. Even though the paternity test results had yet to come out, Luo Nan could confirm that this tiny sect had a very close relationship with his grandfather and the wilderness laboratory of yesteryear. Wu Jun, the high priestess of the church, was his grandfather's graduate student. They had worked together in the laboratory for many years. Even after the accident in the laboratory, they still kept in touch. It was a small order that was closely related to their family. It had endured for so many years, stumbling and stumbling. Not to mention the story behind it, just its existence alone was enough for Luo Nan to pay considerable attention to it. Especially when they were facing a huge problem. It was not just the Amaterasu cult. It seemed like the foundation of their cult was in trouble as well. Cloak. That's right. His grandfather had said the word cloak more than once. But Luo Nan had always believed that the so-called cloak should correspond to the curtains of developer mode on the mental plane. In other words, it was the scene of a myriad of overlapping curtains when Luo Nan first used clairvoyance on the mental plane. So there's a real thing? Luo Nan was truly a bit confused. At the same time, he grew more and more curious. He hated that he couldn't immediately meet First Ablatum Wu Jun and get to the bottom of things. Unfortunately, they had missed the opportunity this time, and according to Yan Fen, that person wouldn't be back in a short period of time. Teske, I actually forgot to ask for his contact information. Of course, even if I had asked for it back then, Yan Fen probably wouldn't have given it to me. I'm just observing for now. Yan Fen will certainly have to give me an explanation after such a huge change happened in my family. But according to her, Wu Jun went to the wilderness and was part of the Order's secret operation. It's basically impossible for her to use a satellite phone, a tool that exposes her target. Communication between the two sides is pretty much cut off. Luo Nan casually grabbed the flexible e-ink screen and wrote and drew on it. He pondered over how to quickly lock onto and contact Wu Jun. The Xia Luo Order might have a method of contacting the extraordinary pathway, but the possibility isn't high. After all, their strength looks quite impressive. Even Yan Fen, a high-level existence, only has a C-rank fleshly body. Then I'll just have to use the stupid method. I'll just search the entire world. Where there was demand, there was motivation. Luo Nan knew how difficult it was to advance, and he quickly came up with an action plan with his own characteristics. The virtual brain system has a ready-made algorithm for recognizing facial features. Finding Wu Jun's photo and information is far too easy. I can see it right now. Though it consumes quite a lot of resources, I can treat it as an in-depth training in big data processing. I can still use it when I get back to the Cloud Mist Labyrinth. Oh, I need to use ready-made resources. Wu Jun isn't a vagrant of the wilderness. She's a legal citizen with an account in the social authority system. I can ask Sister Yuan to help me search for her recent whereabouts. She'll most likely leave traces as long as she passes through a city. But the problem lies in the fact that if Wu Jun is carrying out a secret operation, the possibility of her disguise is quite high. She'll also pay attention to avoid the area covered by authority. A simple search based on facial features and authority won't be very useful. This will be quite troublesome. The characteristics of the form, soul, and energy were the best to touch upon the essence. Luo Nan stopped writing inside. Perhaps he was still too anxious. If he continued to toss and turn like this, it would take at least a week. He would consume a large amount of strength every day, and it was very likely that he would do useless work. He didn't forget that the most pressing task right now was to get used to the biochemical reactor he brought back from Spring City as soon as possible. He needed to erase the hidden dangers of the cloud world as soon as possible. Oh, look at what I've drawn. Right now on the flexible e-ink screen, there was a list of simplified steps and keywords to take note of. There was a schematic diagram of the algorithm needed for a global search. There was a basic outline of Wu Jun's store that was being monitored from 2,000 kilometers away. In addition, there were also some lines that outlined a somewhat fuzzy portrait of a person in the center of the drawing interface. This was a woman. She had short hair and a thin face. She wore rather large work clothes. Her body was half squatting and half kneeling in the drawing. She leaned close to the outline of a machine. She even held a repair tool in her hand. She was like a blue-collar worker, but she had a rather weak appearance. The first thing Luo Nan could confirm was that he had never seen this person before. Regardless of appearance or temperament, she was very unfamiliar. But soon he confirmed that this woman who had suddenly appeared in the center of the drawing interface was none other than the Wu Jun he was looking for. How did I draw it? It's like this. Luo Nan quickly came to a realization. This sketch was something he found in an electronic photo frame placed in his bedroom when he was observing Wu Jun's store from afar. Then he unconsciously reproduced it. Luo Nan's work was a bit different when compared to the finalized photo. It looked like there was more meaning to it than in the photo. This didn't seem to be just a result of his black and white art style. Luo Nan was a bit surprised by the results of his own creation. But his current thinking and knowledge were far from what it was like when he first entered the profession. He stared at the sketch drawing and analyzed it in detail for a moment. He was certain in his heart, yes. I specifically talked about this when I was discussing with Mr. Bai and the others about entering dreams, divination, and other psychic techniques. This is the magnetization effect. It was just like how non-magnetic materials could obtain magnetism if they were placed in a strong magnetic field for a long time. A person would also form an effect similar to magnetization if they lived in the environment for a long time. From a rational perspective, the result of magnetization was the hair, fingerprints, utensils, trash, and other traces left behind in the target's life. Outstanding criminal investigators and profilers could use these clues to piece together a relatively complete image. This included emotions, temperament, lifestyle habits, preferences, and so on. But from a psychic's perspective, these objective traces could be absorbed by their special clairvoyance mode, which was filled with personal colors. Then they could be reorganized and restored to a more intuitive image of material and even an answer. The inner world called this the magnetization effect of a spiritual magnetic field. It was a terrible description that was filled with pseudoscience. Luo Nan was more willing to call it the interference of the spiritual core. This was a term he translated from the virtual brain system. It couldn't be called sincere and elegant. And with Wu Jun's situation, she was basically unable to reach the level of Luo Nan and Mrs. Halder, who had formed a clear and distinct core of concept, the level of the spirit-binding core. But being able to place everyone under the same standard and conduct a more intuitive comparison was always more in line with the human mode of thinking. It looked like Luo Nan's condition today was quite good. Then it wouldn't be a bad idea to try psychic. In a certain sense, this was a shortcut for Rui Wen to traverse through space. He could cross over. The digital pen in Luo Nan's hand drew on the flexible screen's work area. He tried to add a new element to this work, a more directional element. Maybe the cloak would be good? It was as if a myriad of curtains crisscrossed and flew in the air before Luo Nan's eyes. They extended into the boundless depths, forming a marvelous scene that Luo Nan jokingly called developer mode. Of course, this scene had a deeper level of meaning, but Luo Nan didn't need to analyze it right now. He just treated it as a kind of creative element, trying to add it to the sketchwork that was nearing completion. A clear purpose formed a kind of stimulation, causing Luo Nan's thoughts and emotions to diverge. He connected them in a series of disturbances. An even deeper and more complex scene was excavated from the memories of his brain. At the same time, it was excavated from the 500 million square kilometers of land and sea, the tens of billions of humans, and the tens of billions of species of life. Objective facts, subjective emotions, simple desires, complex thoughts. Everything formed a sea of information that was enough to crash the brain of any powerful individual. Even though Luo Nan had the external neuron to protect his body and the virtual brain system to keep watch, he wouldn't take the risk to do some analysis. He just relied on his intuition and a few willful emotions that were close to his aesthetics. He picked a few characteristic points at random and used them as a foundation to draw a silhouette of the modeled sea of information. The digital pen finally dropped down. In a short few seconds, Wu Jun's portrait, which was already a bit fuzzy in the drawing area, was nearly completely hidden under the shadows of the simulated ink. It was as if it was submerged by the surging waves of the sea under the curtain of night. Chapter 724. Ocean Waves. Ocean. This was a concept with practical significance. Luo Nan used such a marvelous method to grasp the first fragment of rational significance from the intuitive information of the primal chaos. The electronic pen paused for a moment, then it spun on Luo Nan's fingertips. With this spin, the entire world's sensing network of 500 million square kilometers shrunk by a third. The source of information provided by the billions of humans and billions of living beings was cut off by at least half. Of course, what remained was an enormous amount of information. It was mottled and turbid. There were no meaningful details that could be described. But Luo Nan's choice created some sort of direction for them. It was no longer a vast expanse of haze. Instead, it flowed, forming a general direction and trajectory. In this stage, the information directly gathered from the material plane of reality naturally retreated to a supporting position. And the subjective information that went through the perception, thought and processing of humans and other living beings formed a torrential turbid flow that surged forth. The turbid flow did not flow in the direction of north, south, east or west. It did not surge up and down. Instead, it followed the special dimension of the human heart. It rushed forward under the relatively restricted external environmental conditions. It was also at this stage that the guiding strength of the virtual brain system's rules toward Luo Nan weakened. The wraith sign in the depths of the void spontaneously leaped out, wantonly swimming within the turbid flow of the human heart. Luo Nan's eyebrows jumped lightly. If this were 4 months ago, he would not have furrowed his brows no matter how the wraith sign leaped. But after discovering the abyssal sun disk, Luo Nan could not help but ponder every time the wraith sign acted spontaneously. Then again, there was no point in pondering. Could Luo Nan shield himself from the influence of the abyssal sun? The answer was no. In reality, Luo Nan had endured the heat conduction of the abyssal sun disk every moment of the past 4 months. Although he would ignore this heat conduction most of the time due to the difference in degree, this objective fact existed on the subjective mental plane. It still existed in a powerful anchoring manner. This was especially true when Luo Nan temporarily abandoned the virtual brain system to explore the mysteries of the turbid flow of the human heart. This influence was even more direct. In this sense, Luo Nan had taken the initiative to step into the domain of the abyssal sun disk. He went to observe and learn the rules and laws that affected the control of emotions and desires. Since that was the case, there was nothing more to say. Luo Nan's subtle state of mind was like a drop of water thrown into the sun. It evaporated without a trace in an instant. Correspondingly, he calmly accepted the heat that came from the abyss sun wheel. He went a step further to experience the vague laws behind the heat. It was at this moment that a great sun leapt out of the boundless turbid ocean, radiating scorching light and heat, as well as even more penetrative and even destructive power to every level of the turbid ocean in the human heart. Some emotions and desires were instantly vaporized. Some were blown into pieces and lost all meaning on all levels. However, there were still some that, under the bombardment of stimulating energy, revealed information that was previously hidden even deeper. The turbid currents, which had been chaotic in the first place, became even more chaotic. However, under the powerful blast of the abyss sun wheel, the meaningless and low-level information was almost wiped out. What was left was the marvelous water plants and floating objects. Hiss! Cat Eyes woke up from her nightmare once more. The shadow of the human-faced arachnid was annihilated within the brilliant sun disk. However, the crisscrossing chains became even more twisted and taut. There was even a chain that clutched her neck, dragging her along with the vast and boundless chains and spiderweb into the depths of the turbid current. The spiderweb forcefully churned within the turbid current, entangling countless impurities and trash. Of course, there were some catches that Cat Eyes could not understand. She herself was one of the catches. She had long since been bound to it, unable to escape. And no matter how much Cat Eyes struggled within the turbid flow, no matter how deep she was pulled, the intense light and heat that came from the brilliant sunwheel would always envelop her. It reached far and wide and pervasive. It increased the temperature layer by layer, causing her already extremely fragile willpower to distort, collapse, and boil over together with the impatient emotions at the bottom of her heart. During this process, Cat Eyes felt Luo Nan's gaze. It was not focused on her. Instead, it was focused on all things within the turbid ocean. It was focused on all the distorted and fragmented images and information. Therefore, his gaze was dignified and cold. It blended together with the powerful light of the sun disk, dictating the life and death of all things within the turbid ocean. He was aloof and remote like a god. Cat Eyes was unfortunate. This was because she understood the source of all unforeseen events more clearly than the ignorant existences around her. Therefore, she was the equivalent of looking directly at a god. She endured an even deeper level of destructive pressure. However, Cat Eyes was fortunate. At the very least, she was within the scope of the rules of this grand system. She was close to a god, possessing a bit of the right to pray or beg. Huff, puff. Cat Eyes' breathing was still heavy for a long time after she woke up. It was the same as every time after a nightmare. Her clothes were completely drenched, and the bedsheet beneath her was not able to escape from misfortune. A large amount of heat was lost, and the mental exhaustion was 10 times, 100 times greater. It caused her to hover on the brink of collapse. She wasn't even willing to get up. She just raised her eyelids with great difficulty and looked at the ceiling. Her vision was completely unfocused. Instead, He Yuan's words from the early hours of the morning echoed in her ears. He is currently probing the world. What he probed out was a storm that stirred the world. That wasn't stirring. It was a calamity. Unknowingly, the angle of the sunlight from the outside world had shifted. It shone through the gap in the curtains and fell on the end of the bed, forming a bright edge of light. It also lightly stuck to her smooth calves, bringing a slight warmth. Cat Eyes instinctively twitched. Her calves shrunk back. She could not help but recall the reality of her nightmare, the memory of being illuminated by the radiant sun. Unfathomable and pervasive. It was easy to find adjectives, but the experience of being penetrated, of being peeled open, of having no privacy from the inside to the outside, of having no cover at all. Even the most basic of self-esteem was unbearable. You bastard who bites the hand that feeds you. Cat Eye's little favorable impression of Luo Nan had only been separated by 2 nights, but it had turned to ashes under the roasting of the sunlight. Of course, she definitely would not keep these words bottled up in her heart. Cat Eyes simply dialed Luo Nan's Hexier number, threw these words over and hung up in an instant. Luo Nan responded in an instant, taking the initiative to call back. Sister Cat Eyes, are you okay? Even though it was the psychic wave network, there were some things that could not be said too clearly on this public line. Cat Eyes responded snappily, don't bother me. Then she hung up. Luo Nan was well behaved. His revenge was basically a success. But why was it that his revenge, which was supposed to be a form of venting, carried with it a wondrous fear, excitement, and even an inflated sense of accomplishment? Bastard! Cat Eyes cursed once more. She pounded the bed, but in the end she still crawled up. She fiercely pulled the curtains tight, not letting a single bit of light leak through. Only then did she go and freshen up. A hot bath really did help soothe the mind. Cat Eyes at least had the appetite to eat breakfast by the time she came out of the bathroom. She also skimmed through the news in passing. There were no surprises. Aside from 2 or 3 authoritative news platforms that maintained a bit of modesty, the various media apps, forums, and discussion groups of all sizes of the inner world had already been overrun by gossip such as, Luo Nan secretly did a paternity test, or became a father at 16. The corner of Cat Eye's lips twitched, but she still did not laugh. Indeed, there was nothing funny about it. This was because Cat Eyes and other women who had a close relationship with Luo Nan were all within the scope of the sputtering attacks. Aside from Cat Eyes, Zhang Yingying and even He Yuan were caught up in these rumors. They were all spread around, and some of them were even accompanied by specious photos and video materials. Titles such as Master Luo's Harem actually became rampant for a time. Thanks to the genius teacher Luo, Cat Eyes actually had the momentum to become an internet celebrity of the inner world overnight. Hey, go find Her Majesty Empress Wu if you have the guts. With that person's high profile, there was no need to blindly take photos. There were plenty of photos and videos. During this time, Cat Eyes received messages of comfort and ridicule from her circle of friends one after another. She was basically unperturbed by this. From her perspective, if she really had to be tossed around like last night from time to time, then it would be better for her to be killed. She finished eating breakfast, but before she could even tidy up, her ears vibrated slightly. A new message was sent over, and it came from Luo Nan. Cat Eyes received it and her eyelids twitched. It was a form, and the title was Paternity Relationship Appraisal Opinion. All right, after eliminating the meaningless standard phrases and the long list of gene loci, the final analysis and appraisal results were meaningful. The DNA typing of samples A and B at the 20 ester gene loci tested this time is unable to detect homologous hereditary genes. This does not conform to the laws of Mendelian inheritance. According to the results of the DNA genetic marker typing, it does not support the existence of a blood relationship between sample A and sample B. This was great. All the holes in one's imagination were slapped to death in the blink of an eye. Cat Eyes whistled, but before her voice could fall, the other side had already retracted the message. What came next was an awkward emoticon. I sent it wrong. I should have sent it to my friends and family to prove my innocence. Cat Eyes was stunned. She was really unable to match this awkward emoticon and message with the cold and dignified gaze from last night. Is there really nothing wrong with this fellow? Is there something wrong with me? Her thoughts flowed absent-mindedly. Only after a long while did she reply with a perfunctory, "What a pity." This could be considered her usual attitude of taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. The other side instantly replied with another message, but this time it was a hand-drawn sketch. The center of the image seemed to be that of a woman, but the shadows of the lines were smeared away. All that was left was a faint blurry silhouette. And behind this blurry silhouette there was a technique of perspective. The depth of the image was realized and another silhouette was outlined. As for why she noticed it, it was because Luo Nan had deliberately marked this silhouette. It looked like... Chapter 725. The Psychic Drawing. After tossing and turning for an entire night, this was what came out. Cat Eyes endured the loathsome sun as she headed west from her home in the city center. She crossed several hundred kilometers to arrive at the black market in the outskirts of the satellite city of Xia City, Mangzhong. All of this was thanks to Luo Nan and his latest work. She had not forgotten that she had fallen into this pit in the first place because of this damned psychic drawing. A certain someone actually had the face to ask her to come out and scout for information. What did he mean by, "It involves the black market"? It's not good to disturb Sister Yuan. It was clearly revenge. Revenge. She was muddle-headed. Why didn't she smash the drawing into that fellow's face back then? Oh, she couldn't hit him even if she did. Ungrateful, despicable demon, shameless to the extreme, still trying to act innocent after getting a bargain. In any case, Luo Nan couldn't hear it. Even if he did, Cat Eyes wouldn't care. So all sorts of negative adjectives and adjectives piled up like they were free. It would be best if she could crush that bastard to death. Cat Eyes kept cursing in her mind. At the same time, she didn't forget to memorize all sorts of details on the psychic drawing, especially the outline of the cruise ship. Luo Nan said that he had blindly drawn it based on his feelings, but this was a psychic drawing. With Luo Nan's current fame, there would probably be plenty of people fighting over it if he were to take it out for auction. The location of the cruise ship on the drawing is too far away. Plus, its silhouette from the side feels like it's very high up. The top deck has many wing-like silhouettes. They might be antennas, bridges, and the like. Cat Eyes, whose mind was busy, finally stepped into the vagrant trade center known as the Wild Inn. The style of this cave-like building was closer to the original ecology. There were fewer customers during the day, so the owner took the opportunity to stock up and deliver goods. This place was more like a freight yard than a hotel. The bar on the first floor of the tavern was only open in the corners around the bar counter. The lighting was deliberately dimmed. The atmosphere of private transactions came out, but whether or not it had any practical significance was another matter. At the very least, for the mental cat eyes, she could pretty much see the overall layout and all the minute changes after entering the tavern. Oh, is this too coincidental or too unfortunate? Around the bar counter, there were a few private booths pieced together by high-back sofas. The seats were more or less full and they were all conversing in low voices. Cat eyes walked in casually, inevitably drawing everyone's attention. Most people only raised their eyes and quickly focused on their own matters. Only the innermost side of the room was a little old man who happened to be facing the outside. He winked at her and bared his teeth. Cat eyes responded with a wink. She casually pointed to the bar counter beside her, indicating that they should each do their own thing. The stooped, lazy and spiritless little old man was none other than Xia City's branch's veteran B-rank psychic. At the same time he was also an expert in soul studies, Mr. Bai. They were all acquaintances and friends. The more it was like this, the more they would pay attention to protecting each other's privacy. Under such circumstances, a simple greeting was enough. On the other hand, the person sitting opposite Mr. White deliberately turned his head and looked at them a few times. Cat eyes only felt that the fellow looked familiar, but she couldn't recall who he was for a moment. She simply ignored him. She then sat in front of the bar counter. Blood energy refill. This was both a consumption and a secret signal. Using an expensive drink like blood energy that required honor points indicated that I needed high-end services from the inner world. In the Wild Inn, such high-end services were usually information. As for refill, it indicated that I had an account here. I also made an appointment. The purpose was clear. Don't try to fool me with low-end stuff. The bartender revealed a professional smile. He quickly took out a sealed cup of blood energy from the expensive and sturdy safe beside him and placed it on a tray. Aside from the blood energy, there was also a small flexible screen on the tray. A series of items were listed on the screen. Cat eyes finished scanning the items on the flexible screen in the time it took her to open the packaging. She then rolled her eyes. You guys are going to go bankrupt here, right? The time to make an appointment is a bit short. I understand that you didn't make enough preparations, but you don't need to use information from a week ago to trick me. Also, you can count these two small dinghies as cruises. Can your family's cruises enter an underground river? The bartender's professional smile crumbled a bit. He didn't wait for Cat Eyes to respond when a figure came over and knocked on the counter, indicating for the bartender to get lost. Don't embarrass yourself here. Consider today's pay your training fee. Go work hard. The bartender was a bit stunned. Young Master Zhou? Go. I'm going to chat with my friend. As he spoke, the person who just came over laughed and greeted, Oh my little cat, long time no see. You just came out of the hospital. Did you get your alimony payment? It was this fellow who had been talking with Mr. Bai just now. He even turned his head to size her up. Cat Eyes lifted her eyelids and swept her gaze over the person's face twice. She finally remembered who this round-faced and slightly plump brother was. She didn't say anything. She picked up the blood energy drink and flipped her hand to pour it over. Holy crap. That person suddenly flipped over. His figure could barely be considered nimble, but he was still splashed on his shoulder and the corner of his head by the drink worth 2 honor points. He cut an extremely sorry figure for a time. Cat Eyes didn't follow up with an attack. She only said, It's yours. It's mine. That person accepted the towel the waitress handed over. He hastily wiped his face twice and was willing to accept his punishment. Someone who could speak to Cat Eyes like this was indeed an acquaintance. He could barely be considered a friend. Young Master Zhong's name was Zhou Yun. He was also a registered member of the Xia City branch. Plus he had a good father. He was one of the branch's 3B rank fleshly bodies. He was the combat master Mr. Zhong Ji, who was famous for his perfect rotation. Although Zhong Yun had learned from his family, Zhong Yun was a wanderer. He didn't have many accomplishments in the field of combat techniques. He stumbled and barely crossed the C rank barrier. He had an identity in the society, so he put all his enthusiasm into the world of sensual pleasures. He flew all over the world all year round. He spent very little time in Xia City. Alright, back in the day this brother also chased after Cat Eyes. But one time as an assistant, he personally demonstrated the magic of being pierced through the anus by a flying needle. After that he kept a respectful distance from Cat Eyes. Please forgive me for today's matter. Last time that base from the Order of Justice went crazy with alcohol. He brought a bunch of people and pretty much massacred this place. The experienced ones either died or fled. We, the ones who took over, were helpless. Cat Eyes raised an eyebrow. You're here, little boss. Little boss. Participate in the stock market for fun. Let my old man feel at ease. Oh. Then I wish you good fortune. Cat Eyes swept her gaze over the simple and crude furnishings of the cave. She gave him some auspicious words without any sincerity. Playing in this area of Xia City is a small business. It doesn't have much of a future. I'm counting on my old friend to take care of me. Zhou Xian fawningly delivered 2 cups of blood energy. Of course it was free. If it weren't for my old man getting angry, I wouldn't have invested this money in Xia City even if you beat me to death. If I had the spare time I could have run to Ban City, T City or Luo City and invested in a small shop. As long as I could make money from both sides I might be able to shake it up in 2 years. But here when I think of the 3 heavyweights and Professor Luo I tremble. My heart trembles. Cat Eyes picked up the cup and faintly smiled. This was also a vagabond trading house. Disregarding the 3 typical examples that Zhou Xian had mentioned. It was not without reason that Spring City had become a market, but this place was a wild inn. The vast majority of vagabond trading houses made money, including the Wild Inn. But this sort of black market that wandered on the fringes of multi-layered society inevitably faced a considerable degree of competition. Its greatest competitor was the internal resource market of the ability user associations and other inner world organizations. Within a large metropolitan area, the ability user associations, secret orders and other large organizations didn't need to look at reports or look at industries. They only needed to look at whether or not the vagabond trading houses and similar black markets in the vicinity were flourishing or not. The relationship between the two was clearly inversely proportional. At the very least, at the extraordinary level, the more resources a branch of the society or secret orders controlled, the stronger their control over the city, and the smaller the space for the black market to survive. On the other hand, if the large organizations were poorly managed or intentionally connived, or if there were many organizations competing and keeping each other in check, the black market would have the opportunity to expand wantonly. Ban City, which was filled with all sorts of religious sects, T City, which was known as the paradise for maritime explorers, and Luo City, which was a tax haven, were all in such a situation. And in Xia City, where the 3 heavyweights were keeping watch and Professor Luo had appeared out of nowhere, the Wild Inn was destined to only be a single auxiliary function of selling information and transferring supplies. It could only help a limited number of people become rich. On the level of benefits, as soon as the word limited appeared, the foot of the inn would often be smeared with deathly white brains. The Wild Inn had already changed owners 7 times in recent years. The most recent one was the Bays Massacre, that Zhong Ming spoke of. It happened not too long ago at the end of last year. It was closely related to the 2 out of 1,000 young miss incident that caused the inner world to become restless. It could be considered to be related to Luo Nan to a certain extent. Cat Eyes recalled her mission when she thought of Luo Nan. She casually pushed the tray and the flexible screen in front of Zhong Ming. Taking care of the business isn't a problem. Now is the time to use you guys. I've already deducted 10 points. Now it's up to you. Yes. Sister Cat will definitely give me a chance to make up for it. Zhong Ming's business attributes were off the charts. He picked up the flexible screen and gave it a few glances. Then he moved to open up the database, preparing to change the information entry. Cat Eyes was a particular person. She understood the order of arrival. She knocked on the bar counter. Mr. Bai is still over there. It's nothing. It's nothing. I'm just helping Blackheart Salt pass on a message. I'm bringing a gift or something. It's awkward for my own people, so I won't get involved. Hey, do you think Mr. Bai can't hear you? Cat Eyes also knew that the Bai and Zhong families were old friends. They had their own ways of getting along, so she didn't need to worry about it. She nodded and raised her cup towards Mr. Bai from afar. This could be considered complete etiquette. Mr. Bai chuckled and waved his hand in response. He didn't look awkward at all. Zhong Ming had just entered the business not too long ago, but his business abilities were decent. He quickly deleted the useless entries on the flexible screen and added many more. He returned it to Cat Eyes. Actually, your conditions are a bit vague. Everyone knows that it's convenient on the sea, but there are far too many similar activities. The ones I picked were all of a scale and style. But you also know that these kinds of activities usually have qualifications. You can't participate just because you want to. Cat Eyes grunted twice and looked at the introduction seriously. Zhou Ming snapped his fingers again. This project can't be waived. But seeing that we're old friends, I'll give you another one for free. This is a project that our group of people worked on. The environment, style, and the goods. They're all pretty good. Zhou Ming lowered his voice and moved closer to speak the last sentence. Chapter 726. Look, it's this ship, the Jade Light. It's basically confirmed to set sail from Ban City next month. It will cross the Pacific Ocean and pass through 5 large metropolitan areas before finally arriving at Luo City. During this time, there will be all sorts of large-scale activities, performances, auctions, fights, gambling, and everything else. Zhou Miao projected an aerial photo of a large cruise ship. The Jade Light, a humpback whale-class mothership cruise ship. 450 meters long, 52 meters wide, 22 decks, top speed 40 knots. Can carry over 15,000 people. The interior has its own dock and can park private yachts. The top deck can take off and land medium-sized fixed-wing aircraft. The cost is close to 3 billion. This was originally Wang Yu's private property, but it was recently donated to the Jade Inspection Society to be used as an event venue. Cat Eye's eyelids twitched when she heard the word aircraft. She cast her gaze towards the aerial photo. She circled around the luxurious business jet parked on the top deck. She really wanted to ask if there were any other angles, but in the end she asked about another matter. Wang Yu? Jade Inspection Society? This is a small organization established by a group of us. It's similar to the Brotherhood. Look, my name, Yu, means beautiful jade, right? And Wang Yu, his name is the same. It's probably a coincidence. Everyone came together and hit it off. You and Wang Yu. Can you reach them? Don't say that Cat Eyes looked down on others. Wang Yu's name wasn't special, but there was probably only one Wang Yu in the world who could casually donate a luxury cruise ship worth 2 billion. She was the chairman of Jadeite Investment, one of the largest private shareholders of Quantum Corporation, and possibly the most powerful youth in the world. Don't even talk about Zhou Miao. Even Zhou Miao's father, a veteran B-rank powerhouse and a combat master, Zhou Miao, was an unreachable distance away from her. Hey you! Don't hit my face when you hit me. Zhou Miao's tone was raised at first, then suppressed. In the end, he could only respond with a mischievous smile. I can't be mentioned in the same breath as Wang Yu, but it's not like the difference between heaven and earth. Look, Blackheart Salt is her girlfriend. I grew up wearing the same pants as her, so why can't I reach her? Huh. Ouch. Zhongji also realized that he had made a slip of the tongue. He didn't even dare to turn around to look at Mr. White's old face. He smiled awkwardly and sped up. I have a lot of information here. I'll send you the event app. There will be real-time updates about the performances and the items to be auctioned. You can take a look. I have something to do, so I'll be leaving first. Saying this, Zhong Yun hurriedly went to hide. Mr. White didn't kill him on the spot, and Cat Eyes didn't care about the fate of the surnamed Zhong at all. She just sat quietly in front of the bar, waiting for the relevant information to be sent to her. She looked through it one by one. This was especially so for the pictures of the Emerald Light. After 5 minutes of picking and choosing, she finally found one that felt most similar to the Emerald Light among the hundreds of pictures. After making some adjustments, she formed a silhouette effect and pieced it together with the psychic picture in her hand. After a simple zooming process, the silhouette that was converted from a real-life photo successfully replaced the relatively blurry shadow of the cruise on the psychic map. It was almost perfect. This result, Cat Eyes didn't hesitate at all. She sent Luo Nan the comparison diagram and the relevant information regarding the Jadeite Light to Luo Nan. Mission complete. She did it in a straightforward and efficient manner. It was simply like the originally expensive cup of blood energy that was now free. She drank the expensive drink that was worth 2 honor points in a single gulp. The warm flow of nourishing energy entered her throat, and great waves surged from the bottom of her heart. Why was it so simple? Why was it so coincidental? Cat Eyes had long felt that Luo Nan's decision to hand this matter over to her was a rather strange one. In terms of intelligence gathering ability, even if Cat Eyes were to fly a plane, she still wouldn't be able to catch up to He Yuan, who specialized in her field and controlled a large number of channels. What did it mean that it was inconvenient to involve the black market? This sort of reason was completely untenable when she thought about it in detail. Did the sources of intelligence still have to be legal and formal? But the truth was that Luo Nan had forcefully assigned the mission to her. He wanted her to go to the black market to search for clues. Not long after she arrived at the Wild Inn, she bumped into Zhou Yun, an old acquaintance. Zhou Yun just so happened to give her accurate information. Zhou Yun certainly didn't know anything about the cause and effect of the entire matter. He just acted according to his usual temperament and personality. He embodied the friendship of a businessman, nothing more. The series of circumstances in the Wild Inn completely conformed to the chain of logic at the time. There was nothing awkward about it at all. But as she replayed the events in her mind, Cat Eyes felt as if she was on an interior stage called the Wild Inn. She and everyone present had performed a play called Intelligence Gathering together. Every single person on the stage was a movie king with off-the-charts acting skills. The entire play was completed in a single breath. It flowed down in a continuous stream. Not a single trace of a performance could be seen. Perhaps she had drunk too much blood energy. He felt a bit intoxicated. Cat Eyes was in a daze for a time. She couldn't differentiate between reality and illusion. She subconsciously supported herself on the bar counter and stood up. She prepared to walk out. It was at this moment that a slight stimulation from the outside world caused her to fiercely wake up. She turned her head to look and just happened to meet Mr. Bai's puzzled gaze. "Oh, Cat Eyes, you're going back just like that?" Cat Eyes stood still. In the end, the experiences of last night now and even the recent period of time had caused her some trouble. It was impossible for her to go see a psychiatrist. However, when she coincidentally met an expert in a related field, the preset obstacles were naturally erased. She hesitated for a moment before walking over to the private room. "Mr. Bai, are you looking for someone to drink a few cups with?" Mr. Bai cheerfully extended his hand and gestured for Cat Eyes to sit. Come, come, come. We're all drinkers. A few cups is just right. You're not like that little bastard Zhou Yun. He's slippery to the point where he can't even touch his hands. I'm afraid the old Zhou died with everlasting regret." Cat Eyes found a waiter and ordered 2 bottles of wine. She poured Mr. Bai's wine, but as she was pouring the wine she heard Mr. Bai sigh. "Big brother, don't laugh at second brother. There's still someone who died with everlasting regret." Clearly Mr. Bai was talking about his own daughter, Bai Xinyan, who worked for Quantum Corporation and held a high position. Bai Xinyan was a very complicated woman. She had traveled tens of thousands of miles to treat Luo Nan. Their relationship was quite good for a time, but she was also the biggest driving force behind the 2000ths of a girl incident. It was just a semi-rumor, but it set off an enormous storm. It nearly caused the power balance of the inner world to collapse. Cat Eyes and Bai Xinyan's friendship was mediocre, so there was no need for her to make any comments. Mr. Bai also did not want to complain to her. He smiled and rubbed against the hot topic. "I don't see you breathing a sigh of relief after the DNA report came out. It's not easy to clear up the misunderstanding." He was clearly talking about Luo Nan's paternity test. The smile on Cat Eye's lips was a bit cold and cynical. Actually, she had always believed that Luo Nan's actions were far more vile than people could imagine for a woman who possessed an independent spirit. However, she was the one who courted death first. Luo Nan's subjective lack of intent caused the entire matter to become vague and unclear. The current problem was the current Luo Nan, a powerful person who could wander in and out and control the will of others. Was he really still a muddled youth? Cat Eyes could not see it. Misunderstandings are very normal. Even if you look at the child with your own eyes, sometimes you can't even feel that it's your own flesh and blood. Let alone outsiders who are completely unaware. Mr. Bai drank a large mouthful of chicken soup for the soul, but the one who drank the most was still himself. At the same time he poured mouthful after mouthful of the soup into his mouth. It made his figure seem all the more stooped and even pitiful. Cat Eyes did not go along with him. She did not console him. She just drank cup after cup with Mr. Bai. She waited until the little old man's mood had calmed down a bit before she said, "Mr. Bai, I want to ask for guidance. What in the world is the psychic technique? Mr. Bai went, oh, and suddenly raised his head. His mind was clearly roused. Luonan is trying to psychic again? He's drawing right? What's the situation? Do you have any works of art on hand? Cat Eyes raised her cup. She smiled and swayed, but she did not say anything. Mr. Bai reacted. She had just asked one question and he had thrown back 4 questions in a row. This was not proper. He chuckled in amusement and poured himself another cup. This could be considered an apology. Your boss Luo is a first-rate psychic in Xia City. You should go ask him this question. Oh right. Is he still saying that his psychic technique is just a random drawing, that he's just making up the numbers? Cat Eyes was surprised. She immediately sneered. This is taking advantage of him and then flaunting it. This has always been his style. Mr. Bai slapped the table and laughed out loud. This time he temporarily forgot about his vexed matters. He was in high spirits as he said, that's right. When he said these words back then I wanted to slap him. Look at his battle achievements and psychic effects. Even old Yu has times where he makes mistakes. How much is his success rate? 100%. Oh. You psychics have been having quite a few gatherings these past few months. It's always been like this. It's just that Boss Luo didn't participate in the past and you didn't care, so you didn't pay attention. Speaking of psychics in Xia City, most of us have been affected by old Yu's magnetization. Our psychic senses and judgments are quite decent. We have quite a bit of talent in psychic techniques. Oh my. Counting from old Yu, me, Gao Tianshi, and Horned Demon for consecutive B-rank psychics or psychics. Oh, Her Majesty Empress Wu has a divine and heavenly disposition, so she can't be counted. Luo Nan is the first person who hasn't been affected by old Yu. Also, the bamboo pole can only be considered broken when it comes to him. Mr. Bai checked the name list and commented one by one. Here old Yu is proficient in divination techniques. The tall and fierce Gao Tianshi borrows the self-hypnosis techniques of the ancient religious system. He invites the gods to possess his body. Horned Demon relies purely on his natural endowments. He plays too evil, so let's not talk about it for now. As for me, I engage in dreaming techniques on the mental plane. I construct a dreamland. Hey. Who do you think your boss Luo pays more attention to when it comes to communication? Cat Eyes didn't even need to guess. She saw the smile lines at the corner of Mr. Bai's eyes and lips. She raised her cup and toasted him. There's no need to say more about the obvious. Cheers. Mr. Bai laughed happily. Yeah. It's the two of us who get along the most. Horned Demon hasn't met him face to face, so there's no need to talk about it. Old Yu's divination technique requires a deep accumulation of traditional culture. There's also a talent requirement in the area of algebra. We aren't cut out for that. Gao Tianxi's side is pretty much the same. He's a god and he doesn't really suit his taste. Only my side picks materials on the mental plane. I also have a set of suitable special logic. I have materials and methods. Then I can design a building, arrange a labyrinth trap, put people inside, guide them, tempt them, and dig out deeper information. I can predict a more accurate possibility. Isn't it quite simple and clear? That's why we can discuss it the most. Chapter 727. Mr. Bai's description doesn't break away from the habits of a medical worker. His description is rigorous and conservative. He basically won't go overboard. But when it comes to dreams, emotions, desires, and instincts, the route is a guided transformation from false to real. Making dreams come true is the essence of the art of telepathy. Luo Nan made an evaluation in a proud manner. Unfortunately, he could only say it in his mind. Right now he sat upright in the classroom. There was a ceremonial feeling of the final lesson. The school's courteous, helpless, and resolute suggestion and the results of the family meeting had basically decided that Luo Nan's 96 to 97 school year would end early. Right now it was just a matter of going through the motions. As for when he would return to school to continue his studies, there was still no definite date. Luo Nan's appearance in the classroom was completely meaningless in terms of his studies. He just came to hide in peace. The omnipresent gossip was already very annoying. There was also the ridicule from the group of friends and relatives. Though they didn't have any evil intentions, it wasn't good for his concentration. Right now he sat in the classroom. He automatically blocked out the teacher's lecture and the surrounding noise. He received the information from Cat Eyes and carefully reviewed it. Luonan didn't mind Cat Eyes chatting with Mr. Bai and talking about him behind his back. At most he would just spit out a mouthful. He knew that Cat Eyes had been quite distressed recently. If she had asked him directly, he wouldn't have been stingy in explaining it. But if she didn't come looking for him, he couldn't force himself to say, "I tormented you last night because of OXX. There's no problem. Just relax and it'll be fine." Oh, he really did feel a bit guilty when he thought about it this way. Luonan coughed and took a deep breath. He adjusted his sitting posture and focused his attention back on the projected work area. The information sent over by Cat Eyes, especially the information related to the jadeite light, met Luonan's expectations. Cat Eyes had perfectly fulfilled the role of a Dai. Within the hazy background, she had highlighted a significant factor. Luonan's judgment was the same as Cat Eyes. He also believed that the jadeite light cruise ship was extremely compatible with the fuzzy outline he had drawn on the psychic diagram. And he went one step further than Cat Eyes. His body was in Xia City, but his mind had already traveled over 1,000 kilometers. He crossed the open sea and arrived at the large marine metropolis located on the archipelago. Just as the information indicated, the Jade Light was docked at the cruise terminal in Ban City, carrying out intensive preparations for the voyage. At this time, there were a total of 4,279 staff members on the cruise ship. The tourists near the docks, the factories and so on within 20 square kilometers had about 100,000 people. Luonan's mental sensing network was supported by concentrated water molecules. It adhered to the bodies of over 100,000 people. Luonan relied on the face recognition algorithms of the virtual brain system to sift through them in a short few minutes. The result was not satisfactory. The Xieluo order's female officiant was not detected. Should I say as expected? Luonan maintained an extremely good state of mind. He wasn't dispirited or impatient. After determining that it would be very difficult to make a breakthrough, he temporarily shelved his screening work and returned to the materials. He went through them page by page to see if he could find a new trigger point for inspiration. Wu Jun's matter isn't that urgent. There's still enough time to deal with it. Moreover, in this matter my thinking and methods are not wrong. Luonan reviewed the materials and scrutinized his own methods. He was quite confident in his final conclusion. Luonan had lived a relatively peaceful life over the past few months. Aside from the incident he caused in Spring City 2 days ago and the occasional mental wandering that caused trouble for the explorers who were searching for a needle in a haystack, he basically did not have any other major operations. No one was blind enough to provoke him. Therefore, these 4 long months of peace were a period of sedimentation for Luonan. It allowed Luonan to truly make up for his most lacking extraordinary theoretical foundation. There was the virtual brain system that came from an unknown civilization. It was mature, profound, complex, and rigorous in its configuration and dynamo core design rules. There was also the crystallization of various theories that were still in its early stages on Earth. They were mainly guesses based on experience, but there was no lack of resplendent brilliance. In this way, Luonan's behavior and judgment erased many elements of imagination, conjecture, and gambling. His goals became clearer, his methods became more concise, and his self-confidence rose with the tide. The only unpredictable factor in the drawing process of the psychic diagram was the influence of the abyss sun disk. Once he accepted it, Luonan didn't believe that there would be any flaws in the other links. I'll use the mental sensing network that covers the entire world to search the environment Wu Jun has lived in and the people she has influenced. I'll search for traces of that special magnetization. I'll also perfectly avoid powerful extraordinary species people who might cause a backlash. Then I'll use the observation and special intuition tempered from my speed writing practice to extract concise feedback from the vast background information. This is a search and judgment. It's an evaluation and calculation. At the same time, it's an associative creation. This is my forte. Luonan's mental senses and the acuity of his psionic senses went without saying. They were top-notch in the world. At the same time he controlled the Wraith sign, allowing him to probe into the depths of a person's emotions at any time. This was the best tool to search for materials. And the sketching technique he practiced since he was young was ingeniously combined with his senses and psionic senses. It formed a logical chain of observation, discovery, capture, reproduction, and reconstruction. The combination of the two formed the core cornerstone of the living starry sky and the large production line of the closed system. This was the fundamental method he used to construct his system. Of course he had confidence. He had to have confidence. Perhaps there were many people in this world whose logical thinking and associative imagination abilities were more powerful than Luo Nan's. There were also many people whose sketching techniques could crush Luo Nan into dregs. However, they would never be able to possess the breadth and depth of perception that Luo Nan possessed. They would never be able to possess the keen grasp of the laws of extraordinary power and the flow of emotions, instincts, and desires that were built upon the dual systems of the virtual brain and the wraith sign. This was the disparity that was essentially insurmountable. This disparity determined whether a sketch was a display of pure artistry or a miraculous display of insight and foresight. Plus, there was the abyss sun wheel. Under the boundless and pervasive light, the emotions and desires of people were like bacteria under a microscope. They were magnified and dancing in an exaggerated manner, full of sensitivity and desire to express themselves. Why did Luo Nan favor the dream-inducing technique so much? It was because the dream-inducing technique was the only method Luo Nan had up until now aside from the similarity in basic concepts. He could partially explain and practice the wraith sign system, receive and utilize the power of the abyss sun wheel. Of course, the influence of the abyss sun wheel was like an enormous, turbulent wave. It felt good to have the wind and the current go smoothly, but it would overshoot if one wasn't careful. The psychic technique can retrace the past. It can foresee the future. The dream-inducing technique plus the abyss sun wheel, along with my original creative intent, are all aimed at foresight. But right now, the driving force is hard to control, and the information I extract and associate is far too jumpy. I can't find Wu Jun right now. Excluding the possibility of the psychic failing, it's more likely that this matter hasn't happened yet. Luo Nan wrote and drew in the virtual work area, arranging the information he had gathered. He also began to interpret the results of his own psychic technique. If this is the case, then there are quite a few missing links that need to be filled in before the scene of foresight. Oh, I also need to pay attention to the problem of the psychic main body. Wu Jun's whereabouts is a problem I urgently want to know. It is related to my personal interests. Therefore, the construction of the dream-inducing world and the rules of its operation revolve around me. The results obtained through psychic communication and divination must be established on the foundation of my deep participation. In this way, the jadeite light isn't simply a place where Wu Jun will appear. It's the intersection point between me and Wu Jun. I can come into contact with the jadeite light at any time, but the intensity of observation shouldn't be enough. Then do I need to personally go there? The psychic technique isn't tampering with the world line. Instead, it's a kind of observation, grasp, and conjecture of the natural development trend. In other words, if things continue to develop according to normal circumstances, I might have a higher chance of boarding the jadeite light and meeting up with Wu Jun there. 15 minutes ago, the concept of the ultra-luxurious giant ship, the jadeite light, didn't exist within Luo Nan's knowledge. However, the current location of this giant ship was the cruise ship dock of Ban City. Ban City was a place Luo Nan had to go to in the next few days. He needed to make advance arrangements for the purge of the cloud world. He also needed to use the resources of the Blood Flame Order over there to practice and master the new abilities brought about by the biochemical reactor. In particular, he needed to adapt to the short yet powerful explosive period of the weak electromagnetic muscle structure. The situation seemed to have become a bit clearer. But how could he take another step forward? He never had any plans to ride a cruise ship. He didn't even have one now. Who could hold a gun to his head and force him onto the ship? Luo Nan went in circles for the following period of time, but he didn't get any results. Right when he was feeling helpless, the hexa ear vibrated slightly. Someone was looking for him. Luo Nan raised his eyebrows when he saw the contact. Oh my, this is a broken pot that's broken. He's taking the initiative to deliver his head. The person who sent the communication request was none other than a certain person who had gotten into trouble by mistakenly believing in Big Mouth. Luo Nan let out a breath and directly issued an ultimatum after connecting. Bro Octopus, let's meet in the fighting arena tomorrow. We'll settle our grudges in a single fight. I guarantee I won't kill you. Can I talk about proper business? My proper business has become a world-class tidbit. Why don't you explain it to me? Cough, a professional explanation is definitely no problem for me. According to the YSTR gene locus, You and the other person definitely don't belong to the same paternal line. You need to know that I've even collected a sample from your grandfather. I've even called up the SCA database for your father's genetic records. I can confirm that there isn't even a 1 in 10,000 chance. This is good news, right? Hee hee. Luo Nan could only respond in this manner. Frankly speaking, Luo Nan let out a sigh of relief in his heart with this kind of result. Even though he didn't have any so-called expectations towards a certain person, it wasn't a bad thing to be able to be a bit less disgusting. Also, he could use a more natural attitude to face polio. This was undoubtedly a good thing. Right. This was a good thing. But he still wanted to beat that bastard octopus to death. Octopus laughed dryly a few more times, but he lacked the strength to continue. He simply sent a picture over. The picture was automatically projected onto his retina in the communication state. It should be an automatic photo. The items on the picture were all crooked, but fortunately the general appearance could be seen. The surface of the thing was wrapped in leather. The pages of paper were folded together in the middle, and they were connected by neatly arranged metal rings. It looked square and heavy, and the whole thing was a bit fluffy. As this was an old notebook. It was an item that had practically been eliminated in the current era. However, the one in the picture clearly fully realized its value. Looking at the stains on the edges, it should be more or less filled with words. Rational thoughts flowed to this point. Only then did the emotional response suddenly surge forth. It was like liquid nitrogen leaking out of control. It instantly froze Luo Nan's expression. He was far too familiar with this form and appearance. In fact, he had one right by his side. Chapter 728. From the Pingjiang district in the southwest of Xia City to the Lilan district in the northeast, there was a large diagonal that ran through the entire city. Normally, this traffic line was known for being busy and congested. Luo Nan rushed out of the classroom. He grabbed a flying beetle before most people got off work and hurried over to the Shangding building. The road conditions were much better than normal at this time, but Luo Nan only felt that it was slow. At this moment he especially missed the days when Qin Yikuan and God accompanied him, especially the latter's flying car. It was fast and stable, and it could reach the destination in one stop. It was much better than the metal worms that were circling between the buildings. Luo Nan sat in the car. He was clearly going in a straight line, but he had to make turns. It was hard for Luo Nan to not be impatient. Luckily, Octopus was always online chatting with him. They're going through the reward channel. They even sent photos and some photocopies. There's no need to doubt the authenticity. It's just that they don't think highly of my title as an agent, so they want you to personally negotiate with them. Thank you, bro Octopus. At this very moment, the bit of resentment regarding the paternity test had long since been tossed beyond the highest heavens. Luo Nan only had gratitude towards Octopus. Deep gratitude. The reward channel, the two spoke of, was the mission reward area on the official website of the Ability User Society. It was the only official channel for ability users, their various powers and organizations to realize employment. Luo Nan's grandfather's notebook was hung here to accept the reward. It was Octopus's doing. It happened at the end of September last year. At the time, Luo Nan had just finished his first mission after joining the Xia City branch. He went to the sanatorium to visit his grandfather and unexpectedly reunited with Octopus, who he had cooperated with on the mission. Luo Nan admired Octopus's ability to concoct drugs. Octopus, on the other hand, was very interested in Luo Yuandao's nerve-strengthening drug formula and the corresponding theory in Luo Yuandao's notebook. The two reached an agreement. Octopus would help Luo Nan concoct the drug, and Luo Nan would authorize Octopus to make a rubbing of the notebook for in-depth research. Later, Luo Nan rapidly broke through the limits of the self-format. Drugs and whatnot were no longer of use to him. Octopus kept on studying Luo Yuandao's notebook and published many papers one after another. He could be considered the first person to open the door for formatting theory. Both sides of the transaction were interesting people. Luo Nan's drug concoction had been set aside, but he believed that Octopus's research on his grandfather's notebook provided solid proof for the value of formatting theory, so he was very satisfied. As for Octopus, the drug concoction conditions he had originally agreed to were now useless, but he didn't want to take advantage of Luo Nan. So he paid out of his own pocket to rent a long-term advertising spot in headquarters' official bounty area, offering a bounty for the whereabouts of Luo Yuandao's notebook. Octopus had mentioned this matter to Luo Nan before, but Luo Nan had forgotten about this matter after half a year had passed until today. Compared to the restless Luo Nan who had heard the good news, Octopus, who had originally intended to use this to make up for his crimes, had regained his rationality earlier. He fiercely gave Luo Nan a heads up. Since the other side has proposed negotiations, they certainly won't be satisfied with the bounty on the list. Right now your status and value are different. The name formatting theory has undergone an earth-shattering change compared to before. To be honest, the price hanging on it doesn't match. We have to be prepared for the price to be raised. Yes, I know. Hey, you're clearly going to get ripped off if you negotiate in this state. Don't forget, this is just one of the hundreds and thousands of notebooks your grandfather has. If the first standard is raised too high, then the rest will really explode. No matter how good your credit rating is, it won't be able to fill this bottomless pit. Yes, I know. Fine. Let's find external help. Octopus looked at Luo Nan's dishonest appearance and felt despair. He was a young man. Once his emotions got to his head, he would certainly disregard the consequences. He knew that he wasn't a negotiation expert, and he wasn't someone who could persuade Luo Nan. He could only place his thoughts on someone else. If there's something, find the secretary. I'll ask Vice President He and have her come over to help you negotiate. Yes, I understand. No matter what happened, Luo Nan, who was burning with anxiety, arrived at the Shangding building half an hour later. He headed straight for He Yuan's office upstairs. He Yuan and Octopus were already waiting. The two were in the middle of a discussion about the identity of the person receiving the bounty. He Yuan was very concerned about this point. Since we're going to negotiate face-to-face, why do we need to remain anonymous in advance? Maybe it's a habitual setting. I'm also used to being anonymous when I shop online. He intentionally changed the subject when you asked him just now. Could it be an acquaintance? An enemy? Octopus felt that he was a good person and didn't have many enemies. He naturally turned his gaze to Luo Nan, who had just pushed open the door and entered. Right now, Luo Nan's mind was filled with notes and notes. He forced a smile at the two and said, "You'll know when you see him. Brother Octopus, I'll trouble you to contact him. We'll talk face to face." "That's fine. But you're just going to talk like this? Shouldn't you be sitting in a boss chair, separated by an office desk, and have a secretary standing next to you or something? Yes, you're wearing a school uniform." Luo Nan knew that Octopus was purposefully teasing him, but he still couldn't help but grin. His mood was a bit more relaxed. "Yeah. I hope they'll give me a discount on account that I'm a poor student." He nodded to He Yuan as he spoke. "Sister Yuan, I'll have to trouble you again today. It's what I should do." He Yuan responded with a smile. Today He Yuan was still dressed in formal business attire. Her hair was tied up, and she wore a simple and generous white shirt on her upper body. Her lower body wore dark-colored trousers paired with heels of the same color. The color was low in saturation, but at the same time she still looked capable and refreshing. She looked a bit more gentle than usual. Needless to say, this kind of makeup, her slightly drooping cheeks, her solemn and dignified aura, and she quietly stood slightly behind Luo Nan. She really did have the style of a first-class secretary. It was just that the school uniform of a certain someone in front of her was too out of character. "I'll be in charge of communication. You'll be in charge of showing your face. Secretary, he will be in charge of negotiating the price. The division of labor is clear. We can't interfere with each other. Especially when negotiating the price. Do you understand?" The three people stood in front of the office desk. Octopus opened up the communication function of the official bounty channel. Since this wasn't an instant communication, Octopus didn't expect Luo Nan to pick up immediately. He seized this time to brainwash Luo Nan with high intensity. Luo Nan let out a breath and was just about to respond when he saw the projection in front of him open automatically. It showed that Luo Nan had received the message and had agreed to make a video call. "Ah, he's here." The gazes of the three people focused on the projection area at the same time. First, a deep blue sky appeared over there. There seemed to be the whistling sound of the wind. The camera here shook endlessly. A face that seemed to be male entered and exited the image several times. It was only after a few adjustments that it finally stabilized. "Oh, Luo Nan, Boss Luo. I see the real person. It really was a male." He spoke in a slightly resounding tone and spoke in a familiar manner. He felt like a rather extroverted person. Truth be told, this person's appearance was a bit simple and clumsy. His forehead was quite a bit wider than an ordinary person's. His eye sockets were deep, making his forehead look like a deformed bulge. It was quite eye-catching. Luo Nan subconsciously examined him. Oh, why does he look a bit familiar? Have I seen him somewhere before? A thought suddenly sprouted in his mind. Before he could react, he heard Octopus groan to the side. Crap. The person in front of him had already cracked a smile at this time. He laughed happily. This is the first time we've met. But you should have heard of me before. I'm a horned demon. Oh. Luo Nan was stupefied when he suddenly heard this title. That's right. He really had heard of this name before. Just an hour ago, Mr. Bai was drinking and discussing heroes. He had even mentioned this person. The horned demon was the only one Luo Nan had never seen out of the several veteran B-rank psychic types in Xia City. Hold on. They were from the same branch. This should be a good thing. Why did Octopus say crap? Right when Luo Nan was confused, the horned demon's line of sight had already shifted. It streaked across Octopus's face and finally stopped at He Yuan. His long and narrow eyes, which appeared especially bright and clear, froze. Then a smile blossomed on his face as his entire face revolved around these eyes. Oh, look what I see. A beautiful woman. A woman. The horned demon's tone became even more resounding, so much so that there were signs of his voice breaking. He was like a lousy opera singer who began his performance in front of the camera. I don't know how to address this lady. Wait a moment. Let me guess. I don't know anyone from the branch, but there's such a stylish beauty. Don't tell me she's the legendary vice president of the Burners, someone's professional secretary, Mrs. He Yuan? Wasn't his performance a bit too exaggerated? Luo Nan's brows subconsciously wrinkled, and the horned demon's face abruptly disappeared from the camera in the next second. This time the camera followed up in a timely manner. It scouted down and captured the figure of the horned demon. The camera only reflected the back of the horned demon. This was because the horned demon's knees and hands had fallen to the ground, ignoring the filthy dust and mud. His head heavily smashed onto the countless wrinkles of the red earth wasteland. At the same time he loudly shouted, "Grandma Yuan, I'm sorry." Luo Nan was stupefied, but He Yuan reacted faster as the person directly involved. She whispered in his ear, "I'm going to hide for a bit." Then she flashed out of the door. On the other side of the camera, the horned demon straightened his upper body. He raised his hands in an exaggerated manner before knocking them down again. He was still shouting, "Grandma Yuan, I'm sorry. Grandma Yuan, I'm sorry." After shouting 3 times and kowtowing 3 times, the horned demon crawled up from the ground. He patted off the dust and mud as if nothing had happened. Done. What's going on? Luo Nan was really confused. No matter how much he imagined, no matter how detailed, it was impossible for him to think of this situation. Octopus held his forehead with his hand, covering half of his face. He lowered his voice and said, "This is the reason why the horned demon lingered in the wilderness. Back then he suffered a crushing defeat against Her Majesty Empress Wu. The agreement he accepted was that he would kneel down and shout 'Grandma, I'm sorry,' 3 times whenever he meets a woman within 3 years. Only he could endure this kind of condition. Her Majesty Empress Wu. Right now it's not related to Empress Wu, right?" On the other side of the projection, the horned demon wiped his forehead in passing, but it made the mud even clearer. He didn't care. At the very least, this was what he said, "Right now it's about the bounty. You guys only put up 10 points. This is too insincere. With Boss Luo's current status, it shouldn't be a problem to multiply it by 100, right? 1,000 points. Why don't you just rob a bank?" Octopus slammed the table. "You think selling you is worth 1,000 points?" The horned demon